So that's the creation of the rates. That's going to be very useful for you guys. But you can do more things than just compute mathematical operations with these variables. You can also transform the variables from one scale of measurement to another scale of measurement, or for instance, assign numbers to qualitative variables, right? And in those cases, you need to use an extra function called case when, okay? And the first example that I'm going to give you is how to assign numbers to nominal and ordinal variables. This is a new, like a more complex version of the syntax of this function. So keep an eye on those nuances that can make everything to collapse. So be careful with that. Be careful with, for instance, with the commas. Be careful with the tildes. Let me open this. Be careful with the tildes. For instance, in this case, the tilde is very important because the tilde is assigned. Okay, so I'm gonna read this to make sense, okay? So we use mutate and we say create a new variable, and that variable will take certain values when another variable has certain values, okay? In this case is take the value of one, when variable one takes the value of female. So remember that we want to convert a nominal variable into a numeric variable, right? And that nominal variable was, for instance, gender. So variable one in this example is gender, right? Gender has usually female and male. So I want to say that I want to create a new dichotomic variable called female that takes the value of 1 if variable 1 was female and 0 if variable 1 was male, okay? We use this part that I'm highlighting here because sometimes you have missing values. When you have missing values, you are telling the system to assign an NA to those values, okay? Let's create this with our Star Wars dataset. So let's create a new version of Star Wars called Star Wars 4 that is going to be based in let me see, Star Wars 2 is fine, yeah, Star Wars 2, and I use the pipe, I use mutate, and I'm gonna say create a new variable called female. It's gonna take the value of, I use here case when, case when variable one, what is variable one in this case is gender. Let me see, just to check. Yes, gender. Sorry. When gender takes the value of female, I use tilde here, call this 1. And when gender takes the value of male, check if it is with the first one with capital letter. No, it's all of them without capital letters. Okay. Sorry, is this one male and this one is female. So when gender takes the value of male, till this is 0, okay? And also create, I'm sorry, and use this function true, tilde, NA, because this is a very long function, chances are that I made a mistake, but I think this is correct. Ooh, that's good. It created a new variable called female that takes the value of 0 if, for instance, Darth Vader, who is a male, here, and it's going to take the value of 1 when the character is female, such as Princess Padme, for instance. Cool. So this is correct. We don't have any missing values here, so we didn't check if this part of the structure is correct, but I think it's correct. Okay, so that's to create a nominal or ordinal variable, to assign numbers to a nominal or ordinal variables. And you will see that this is useful, especially when you are conducting certain types of statistical analysis, such as logistic regressions or things like that. But we're going to talk about that later, maybe. Maybe we don't have time for that. Okay. So that's the first transformation that we can do. But you can also transform a numeric variable into another scale. You can do the opposite, for instance, as I am giving the example here. You can use certain scale, for instance, certain interval variable, and transform it into an ordinal variable. And sometimes it's useful to do something like that. Again, you use the function case when, and in this case is the opposite. Create a new variable that takes the value excellent when the values of the variable 2, that in this case were numerical, are higher than 3, right? Call or create a new level of that new variable called acceptable when the values of the variable 2 are between 2 and 3. And be careful with this. This is a very interesting part, because what I'm doing here is using the Boolean operators, and in particular I'm using what is actually I made a mistake here. It is supposed to be, this is OR, and I am supposed to use here AND, okay? Because I'm telling the system to find a value that is between a range of values. So it needs to be, I'm sorry, between 2 and 3. So it's AND in this case, and I wrote here OR, but that can be fixed, okay? And later I'm saying the system put the value or assign the value, but when the ranking or whatever it is, this example is lower than 2, okay? Let's see it in our third data set. Our third data set is very interesting. I want to show you the data set first. It has, I think it's 1,000 observations and 7 variables of films. Somebody, I don't know who, collected all this data about the movies that has been released since 1902. It's kind of crazy. By genres, by year, and by rating. The rating goes from 0 to 5. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to change that rating from 0 to 5. And we're going to say that from 3 to 5, the film is excellent. Between 2 and 3, the film is acceptable. And lower than 2, the film is bad. Okay? Okay. So that's the task. I'm going to create a new version called movie. And it's going to transform movie lens. I'm going to use my pipe. And I'm going to use the function mutate. And I'm going to say create. What is the call of this thing? Let me check here 1 sec. Rating, but I'm going to call this rating ordinal. Okay. So rating ordinal is going to take the following values, case when. Okay, so it's going to take the certain values when rating this one is higher than 3, then it's going to be called excellent. Okay, again, rating is higher than, let me check here, than 1.9. And I wrote here incorrectly or, but remember that it's not or, it's and. Is rating, you need to write again the name of the variable. Rating is less than, I think it's 3 here actually. Yeah, 3. 3.1, I guess. 1 and you say that those values are acceptable. Okay. And later you say rating is gonna be less than 2. When rating, the original value is less than 2, then you're gonna say that this film is bad. Okay. And finally, I'm gonna use this true tilde NA real. Okay. And I'm gonna, well, again, this is, chances are very high that I made a mistake, but we can fix it if we made a mistake. Hopefully, I did a mistake here. Must be a vector, not a double vector. What is error? Must be a vector, not a double vector. What is a double vector here? Let me check. This. I think. Let me check one sec. Might be wrong. Okay, something I did wrong with that part, but okay, I think this worked. So the new version called movie has the new variable. You can see it here: acceptable, excellent, bad, so on and so forth. This is very cool. This is amazing, and this is what you actually do when you are cleaning. Or yeah, you can clean also with these functions, but mostly you transform in order to analyze in a better way. So we're done with mutate. There are more things, many more things that you can do with mutate. But I think these are basic things that you can do, okay? Just to summarize, you can conduct a mathematical operation with one variable or multiple variables, but also you can change the scale of measurement and the actual levels of a variable, okay? Okay, the final function that I want to teach you is the function called summarize. Summarize is used to find descriptive statistics such as the sum of the observations, the minimum value, the maximum value, the standard deviation, the mean, the median, and so on and so forth. Of it gives us those summary statistics from a total column or a total variable, or certain combinations of those variables. And in such a way, an additional function called group by is very important here. Okay, look at this example. We first use group by to say that we want to organize our data in a particular way. For instance, we want to use, categorical variables that are groups, actually. For that reason, is group by, organized by those groups, for instance, by states, by cities, by gender. Even you can use it with other kind of variables, such as by years. And once you have organized or you have organized the data in such a way, later you say, okay, now summarize and tell me the mean of another variable, but summarize in these groups that I just created. Okay, I know that this doesn't make a lot of sense right now, but it's gonna make sense with the example that I'm gonna give you. Okay, the other thing is that as I said, you can use here whatever but these descriptive statistics that are very useful. You can use the mean, the max, the minimum value, the maximum value, the mean, the sum of the scores or the values of that variable, the standard deviation, and the interquartile range. What makes sense here is that you cannot find certain things like these ones for qualitative variables, right? So it makes more sense to use a quantitative variable here. For instance, you cannot find the standard deviation, of course, of a qualitative variable, okay? Okay. So let's go to R and let's see how this works. And I want to use for this one, Morders. So I'm gonna go again to Morders. I'm gonna use my, okay, what do I want to do here? Okay, I'm gonna give you an example because the data set Morders, if you remember, is like gives you one value per each state, or is one observation per state. I'm gonna use to group the region, because region can give me more kind of relevant data here. So let's do it, and everything's gonna make sense. Okay, so I'm gonna use a new version of More. Okay, I'm gonna use my pipe, and I'm gonna use some, no, first of all, I'm gonna use group by region. Remember that I can use the pipe several times, and now I'm gonna use summarize, right? I'm gonna summarize, I'm gonna create a new variable called the minimum, which is gonna be the mean of total. So I'm gonna create the descriptive statistics for the variable Morders. And remember that Morder in this case is called total. It's the total number of Morders per each state. And I'm gonna give a summary statistics for the region. Okay? So I have here total. Let me see if I'm doing this correctly. Okay. I'm gonna create here max. Okay, in this case max. Now I'm gonna have the mean, which is the mean of total. Now I'm gonna have the standard deviation. That's gonna be the standard deviation of total. Do this several times. Okay, I'm gonna have the sum. I'm gonna have the median, I don't know. Median. And finally, I'm gonna have the median interquartile range. So keep in mind that this is the name of the new variable, and this is the name of the function, okay? Or the operator. To don't make a mistake, I'm gonna change here. I'm gonna write Morders mean. That remind you always that this is the name of the variable, the new variable that I'm creating, that summarizes Morders by those descriptive statistics. Okay. Now let's see what happened with this new one. Another thing. If I do this, the dataset Morder is gonna change dramatically. So when you use the function summarize, it's better to create a totally new object. Okay. And because this is kind of the structure of a table of descriptive statistics, I would like to call this table 1. Let's see what happened. I think it's correct. We're going to have 4 observations for each one of the regions. I don't know what happened with some of the regions, but this has, because there are supposed to be 5, right? But okay, but there are 4 regions and 8 variables. Look at this. So beautiful. Okay, so we have these data sets. We created all these data sets. We manipulated data sets. And these are the main topics that we're going to cover for this lecture. Now, 2 things. If you have questions about how to select, filter, mutate, summarize, and arrange, write me those questions. you can also come to office hours. Many people have said, hey, Pablo, I would like you to do this and this and to explain more this and this. Or are you going to have a space or any time to talk about these things? And my answer is yes. I already have all weeks I have office hours. If you have questions, come here, or we can set an appointment by virtual office hours. And I guarantee you that that can help you a lot. I have seen how many people have understood difficult concepts, for instance, for lab 2, coming to office hours. So office hours is helpful, okay? Now, all other people told me like, you need to explain me so much better what are you gonna ask in the lab? And I always do it. Last time I also explained the functions, and I even told you, I'm gonna ask you about this function, I'm gonna ask you about this thing. So I don't know why some people tell me that I haven't explained that. But I understand the frustration, I understand that sometimes it's difficult, and I understand that syntax is crazy. That if you miss a comma, you can have like a huge problems. If you forgot that a categorical variable has to have the values of a categorical variable has to be in quotation marks. I understand those things. But use the replication, use the materials that I upload, use Google to try to solve these things. And if you cannot do it, if everything still is complicated, please come to my office hours, okay? And the thing is that I cannot do the lab for you guys, because if I do it, it doesn't make any sense. You just repeat it and it doesn't make sense. What I want with these labs is to force you to some extent to apply these concepts. And I know that it's going to be frustrating, it's going to be imperfect, but it doesn't matter. The point is that you learn how to do it, right? And I'm gonna focus less on the perfect result than on the process. For that reason, it's important that you upload the R files and the actual products, because in such a way I can say, oh, okay, maybe it wasn't clear what is the structure of the dataset. It doesn't really matter, right? The most important thing is that later you're gonna understand, okay, I have a cross-sectional kind of dataset. I have a time series kind of dataset. Or don't feel frustrated if you don't get anything right now, but think what you can do later. If you master these basic concepts, if you understand what is an object, that if you use an assignment operator, you're gonna change an object permanently, that you can create several objects, that you can perform several functions, that you can use group by, that you can do increasingly more complex things. Imagine all the things that you can do. So don't think right now in the frustration, think in the possibilities in the future, okay? And now I'm gonna give you, just to end this lecture, I'm gonna give you clues about how to, or what I'm gonna ask you. And I'm really gonna tell you what I'm gonna ask you, so pay a lot of attention. I'm not gonna do it for you, but I'm gonna be here telling you, you need to do this, need to do that, so on and so forth. So, as I said, one of the data sets that is very interesting is MovieLens, right? And notice that MovieLens has 1 million observations, okay? So what I'm gonna ask you to do with MovieLens is, first, you need to filter. So you need to create several, or at least a new version of the dataset in which you filter by the journal. There are like 100 journals because they wrote here the journals that are also combined with other journals. Let's say I want you to focus on drama, comedy, and Western, but read the instructions that I'm gonna tell you, because probably I can change something for, instead of Westerns, thriller, I don't know. It doesn't matter. The point is that I'm gonna ask you to use the function filter to filter by certain journals. Okay, I'll give you all the clues. Later, I'm gonna tell you, look at this. These guys collected data from 1902 to 2020 or 2016. This is a crazy data set. It's really crazy. So the next step is that I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna ask you the following. because there are so many years. What I want you to do is to create decades, like a variable called decades, in which you create like the values of that variable called decades is the 1900s, the 1910s, the 1920s, the 1930s, the 1980s, the 1990s, so on and so forth, right? That's the second step. Later, I'm going to tell you, create a table with the descriptive statistics of those values of the variable decades, okay, or decade, whatever. So what you need to give me at the end, or what you need to estimate, is how many, like the sum, for instance, or the minimum. What is the minimum number of films that were produced for the 1900s, for instance, or the 1990s? What is the mean number of films that were produced in the 1990s, right? So you will have a table with the number of decades and these descriptive statistics, okay? Those are the three things. And finally, I'm gonna ask you to arrange that table in a descending order, okay? And could be in a descending order of, I don't know, the sum of films, whatever. I'm gonna give you the instructions in the lab. So pay attention to this. So I'm gonna ask you first to filter, to select, but that's just the first step. That data set that is gonna be transformed in such a way, then you need to create a new version, a new variable called decades. In such a way, I'm gonna see the extent to which you learn how to use mutate. Later, I'm gonna tell you, prepare a table with the descriptive statistics of that variable decades or decade. In such a way, I'm gonna see the extent to which you learn how to use summarize. And finally, I'm gonna tell you, arrange that table, that new data set called table, with certain descending order, or with the descending order of one of the new variables that you just estimated, okay? I hope that makes sense. As usual, I need you to submit the R file of all the process from library. For instance, in this case, I would save this one called lab3 replication, whatever. And I'm gonna submit from the beginning, from the use of library to, I don't know, in this case, you need to use also write, CSV, and the products. So I want you to submit the R file, and I want you to submit the table of the descriptive statistics and the final version of the dataset, right? So remember that you're gonna have probably several versions of the dataset before you estimate that table. Imagine that I'm talking about the Star Wars, right? I have Star Wars 1, Star Wars 2, 3, and 4. I want the last version after you filter and after you select it, okay? So that's all, guys. Thank you so much. This is a very long lecture, but the other one, the conceptual, was very short and kind of easy.